Chicken on a stick.
Hi, I'm Patrick.
I'm Maggie.
And we are Chicken on a Stick. Welcome to another episode.
Welcome, welcome.
Today we're going to be talking about the 2016 film Hell or High Water.
Hell or High Water. Your pick.
My pick.
Yeah.
It's a movie I absolutely love. I've loved it since I saw it in theaters.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely up there as probably one of my favorite films from 2016.
Yeah.
But we can get a lot more into that momentarily.
Yep.
So, what's the plan? We're gonna watch that bank like a deer feeder. In time, we'll be right. Now, let's see what they got to eat here. Howdy, ma'am. How you doing today?
Hot, and I don't mean the good kind. So what don't you want?
Pardon?
What don't you want?
Oh, well, I think I'll just,
You know, I've been working here for 44 years. Ain't nobody ever ordered nothing but T-bone steak and a baked potato. Except this one asshole from New York tried to order trout back in 1987. We don't sell no goddamn trout. T-bone steaks. So either you don't want the corn on the cob, or you don't want the green beans. So what don't you want?
I don't want green beans.
I don't want green beans either.
Steaks cooked medium rare.
Can I get my steak cooked just
That want no question.
All right.
Iced tea for you boys.
Iced tea be great.
I'll stay here. Thank you, ma'am.
Uh-huh.
Well, tell you one thing. Nobody's gonna rob this son of a bitch. My word.
Okay, so Hell or High Water is a 2016 neo-Western crime drama directed by David Mackenzie and written by Taylor Sheridan. Taylor Sheridan, I really like his work. He's done a lot of things that I know you've seen. In fact, I forced you to watch some of them. But leading into this, into Hell or High Water, he wrote Sicario.
Yes.
He then wrote Hell or High Water. He wrote and directed the next year, Wind River.
Such a good movie.
He wrote the sequel to Sicario, Sicario Day of the Soledad, or Soldado, however it's said. I know I just said it wrong, but it's Soldado, I believe.
Couldn't tell you.
As well as a movie from a couple years ago during the pandemic. He did Those Who Would Wish We Were Dead with Angelina Jolie about the Firewatch lady.
Yep.
He's very famous and well known for doing neo-westerns or contemporary westerns, so much so that he co-created this very popular TV show known as Yellowstone, along with all of its prequel series of like 1883 and then 19 something, which I think has Harrison Ford in it, of which I've not watched. Although I have a lot of interest in watching, I just have not.
Have not watched it, but I know so many people that are just obsessed with it.
Yeah. So just to kind of fill people in with what exactly like a neo-Western is, basically it's a modern Western. So it takes place in modern times.
Right.
And still has themes that are very similar to the standard Western, just brought forward in time. And a lot of it has to deal with sort of people going against convention, kind of seeking out their own form of justice, those sort of general themes, or feeling remorse about something you've done in the past.
Right.
The first, probably, what I'd say modern big movie that you can point to that was this way is No Country for Old Men.
Which is one of my absolute all-time favorite movies.
And if you've ever seen No Country for Old Men, but you've not seen Hell or High Water, if you watch Hell or High Water, you're going to notice a lot of similarities in, maybe especially towards the conclusion of the film, and in the way that the law is sort of portrayed.
Also Texas.
And Texas, yeah. So the film takes place in Texas. The movie was not shot in Texas. The movie was shot in New Mexico.
I figured that, but you do get from the scenery, you get that Texas feel. Everything's flat, everything's kind of bland and boring looking. So they at least made it look very West Texas.
Yeah, so principal photography took place in a place called Clovis, New Mexico, and then they filmed in a bunch of other small towns in New Mexico as well. It very much does, like if you did not know, and if you've ever lived in Texas for a period of time, like in the country, not out in like, I don't know, like Houston or Fort Worth or Dallas or Austin or whatever, if you've ever lived or been out into the smaller towns in Texas, it looks like absolutely exactly like Texas does.
I immediately assumed that's where it was shot. Growing up, I had friends, especially in like college, that lived in these like out in the boondocks parts of Texas. The movie itself not only does a good job of making you feel like you're in Texas and like, you know, out there Texas, but the way that people talk and their mannerisms are so Texas.
Yes.
They do a really good job with that. I'll save that for later.
So really there's there's technically only 3 central characters with one really big secondary character, although I'm just going to count him as a central character. And those are Texas Ranger Marcus Hamilton, played by Jeff Bridges. Jeff Bridges coming in to play a soon-to-be retiring old, grumpy, white Texas Ranger guy. You would not be mistaken if you closed your eyes and thought that this was Rooster Cogburn from True Grit, because it almost feels like a modern Rooster Cogburn. He's very confident in what he does. He's clearly very skilled in what he does.
So good.
And he mumbles a lot.
I Googled, while we were watching it, I was like, wait, is Jeff Bridges from Texas? Because he has it down pat. But no, he was born and raised in Los Angeles. But he does an amazing job.
He does very good.
Very good.
He was a great choice to do in the remake of True Grit to play Rooster Cogburn.
Perfect.
But he's also great here. He's fantastic here. It's a very sort of subtle, subdued performance, I'll say, in that it's it almost feels cliche when you think of any sort of police shows. If you think of like Lethal Weapon, Donald Glover or Danny Glover's about to retire, and he's just like, I'm too old for this shit.
Yeah.
And that's almost the same sort of feel that he gives in this movie. Is he's like, I'm a week away from retiring.
Yeah.
I'm ready to go, but also at the same time he doesn't want to go.
Yeah. Because like, what else is he gonna do?
Right.
And I will say this: I did work at a marina would you consider Rockwell a small town? No, right?
Medium.
I worked at a marina early mornings, and all my customers were retired Southern, like, cowboy types, and they all talked exactly like Jeff Bridges' character. Like, the mannerisms the same, just shooting the breeze and, you know, hanging around, what else we're gonna do, you know, kind of type. So I loved how great he did that.
Our other Texas Ranger that we're going to spend a good portion of this movie with is a character named Alberto Parker, who's played by Gil Birmingham. And Gil Birmingham, basically, Alberto is a half Indian, half Hispanic character.
Right.
He's half Comanche specifically, and then half Mexican is what they say. at one point. The interesting thing about Gil being cast is that Gil, his father was of Comanche descent, so he is part Comanche in that aspect.
That's cool.
And he's also from San Antonio, Texas.
Oh.
So he was a local Texas boy.
Well, there you go.
This is going to be very random, but and only people who ever knew what the movie Trivia Schmodown is would understand this. So if you do, shout out. But you might remember, because I dragged you down to Houston to go see one of their live shows.
You did.
One of the people who competed at that show was a guy named John Roca. Does a lot of stuff on YouTube, movie podcasts, things like that.
I remember.
He wore the cowboy hat and stuff.
Right.
Like, that's his thing. He wore a cowboy hat. His nickname was Outlaw, whatever. A lot of the time, he looks very similar to Gil Birmingham.
He does, doesn't he?
There's an uncanny resemblance that people had made jokes about, like, you look like the guy from Hell or High Water.
I didn't think about that. He does look
Very
like
random tangent, but that was always the thing that's in my head, that they look the same. They look very similar.
That is pretty funny.
And then our two other characters, we have Toby Howard and Tanner Howard, two brothers, played by Chris Pine and Ben Foster. Chris Pine, everybody probably knows Chris Pine. His biggest thing is probably the Star Trek movies that he did, where he played Captain Kirk. And Ben Foster has done a lot of movies, a lot of sort of supporting roles. But he was no stranger at the time to doing a Western, as he is the lead, or I guess right-hand man, of the main villain in the remake of 3:10 to Yuma. So when Christian Bale is taking the guy to the train for the 3:10 to Yuma, his gang that's following him, Ben Foster was the lead of that gang.
He's one of those people, and I asked it out loud. I was like, he's one of those people that I recognize his face. He's a, what did, oh gosh.
Yes.
There's a guy, he's one of your favorite actors. The movie about the water slide.
The movie about the water.
The
Sam Rockwell?
Sam Rockwell.
Sam Rockwell?
Sam Rockwell said...
Rockwell, you got Rockwell in my head.
Sam Rockwell said something when he hosted SNL, and he did his monologue. He said, I'm that guy in movies. A lot of people call me the... And he snapped his fingers 3 times. That guy. And I feel like this is that same thing. It's like, I know your face, but I can't pinpoint what your name is. Or I can't pinpoint exactly what I know you from. And that's exactly what this guy was to me. Like, I know who he is, sort of, but not quite.
Ben Foster's great. I think he's pretty
He's a very good
underrated.
actor.
And when he really gets something to work with, he does fantastic. I saw a movie, you didn't see it last year, but a movie called Medieval, where he's the lead, and it was based on a real guy and all this stuff. The movie was, like, it was fine. It was pretty so-so, but he was great in it. So yeah, he's fantastic.
I believe it.
So into the actual movie, we open, and this is going to be a throwback to anybody who watched our streams. You'll realize something that we're about to talk about. And I guess, spoiler warnings before we get into this, we do talk about the whole movie, so if you've not seen it, pause, go watch the movie. It's less than 2 hours. It's like an hour and 43 minutes or something like that. Go watch it, then come back, and we're just basically going to talk about the movie, share our opinions and thoughts and whatnot.
We're going to dissect it.
Sure.
Do you know if it's streaming anywhere?
I don't know. I can find out.
I think that's the fun part of being able to go into these movies, is being able to break it down step by step and really analyze the storyline. I think that's what makes these particular podcasts fun, because there are so many new movies that we watch that I want to do that so bad too. I just want to spill the beans on everything.
Yeah, so it's available on Hulu if you have access to Hulu, and then you can rent it in a bunch of other places.
There you
So it's been out a number of years. It's like $4 to rent if you really want to rent it, or if you have a Hulu subscription, at least in the United States. There you go.
There you go.
Because I don't think Hulu exists other places. So the opening shot of the movie is a couple of cars pulling into a parking lot. Out of one of the cars steps this lady, As the other car sort of circles around this building, we see that the building this woman's walking to and that the car is circling around is a Texas Midland bank.
Yes.
And the woman is walking towards the bank very early in the morning. There's nothing else really going on the street or anything. And as she's going to open the door, two men rush up behind her with guns and hockey masks on, ski masks, whatever you call them, and force her into the door, trying to commit a robbery.
Right. She's also one of those ladies that I know her from things, but I don't remember her name. But she's a side character a lot.
Yes, she is. Now, in here, this is the part, and that's Dale Dickey, by the way.
Ah.
Or Diana Dale Dickey, whatever she goes by. This is the part that if you have been in our streams maybe about, I don't know, 2 years ago, year and a half ago, whenever the original opening I made was there, a clip from this scene is in it,
Yes.
or was in it. And as they're pushing her into the door, telling her to get in, they're there to rob, open up the drawers and all the cash drawers, all that sort of stuff. One of them does politely just ask her to open the drawers.
Right.
And she says, "Y'all are new to this, aren't you?"
Immediately critical of their process.
Basically, she's telling them that there's no money in the drawers yet because
Right.
she just opened.
Yeah.
Everything is still in the vault, and she doesn't have access to the vault because you need the keys. And the only person who has the keys is the bank manager, who is not there.
Right.
And they're just like, well, the more aggressive brothers, like, well, open the drawers just to make sure. And she opens them, and they're empty, and they're like, fuck, okay, well, when does the manager get here? And she says 8:30, and they're like, shit. And then she does tell them, all you're guilty of right now is being stupid.
That's my favorite thing in the movie. And she's like, you know what? You can turn around right now. You can leave. I don't know who you are. I haven't seen your faces. You can leave. The only thing that you're guilty of right now is just being stupid. And that rubs one of them the wrong way.
Yeah, so Toby, Chris Pine, is much more polite
Level-headed.
and kind of patient, level-headed with her, or at least in his mannerisms, because again, he asked her, like, please open the drawers. Whereas Tanner is much more aggressive and does take insult to being called stupid. So they're kind of panicking, trying to figure out what they need to do. They tell her to come out into the lobby and sit down. She goes to sit on this little, like, bench that's there, and he goes, "No, on the floor!" So she sits on the floor, and they decide to wait for the manager. So, roughly 30 minutes goes by. They're hiding, like, around a corner. The manager comes in.
But most importantly, before this happens, is that there's, like, a lull of silence. And
Oh, yeah, and he says, "You're stupid."
The sassy kid that, like, no, get on the ground. There's just a pause, and he goes, "You're stupid."
You're stupid.
Like a freaking little kid. No, you're dumb.
Yeah.
Stupid.
So the manager comes in, and they get him to open up the vault, and they take off with money. We learn at this point that they're brothers. Again, Toby and Tanner. Tanner is the younger brother.
Young. Chris Pine's younger.
Chris Pine is the younger
Yeah.
brother. Okay, so
Which I
Tanner's the
didn't-
older
which I
brother.
didn't
Chris
think.
Pine's the younger brother.
Yeah.
I remember, obviously one of them had to be one or the other.
I was assuming that the Chris Pine character was older because he was more level-headed. But so I was surprised to find out that the more reckless one was the older one.
Yeah, sometimes that's true in real life. Sometimes it's not.
That is very true.
I'm speaking from experience.
Same.
Are you?
Yes. I was always very level-headed.
So they decide to go to another bank because it's early enough in the morning that potentially nobody would be there. So they pull up to another Texas Midlands bank. As they go in, there is an old cowboy in there who showed up first thing in the morning like old people like to do.
Retired
Which,
cowboy men do.
To be fair, is also what I would prefer to do. Because
That
I
is
like to do
exactly
things
what you would do.
as soon as possible to get them out of the way.
Same thing when I worked. I'm telling you, when I worked at the marina, the doors open at 6. So many old men just shooting the breeze outside, just hanging. What are y'all doing up so early?
They woke up at like 4.
Too early. And he's just an old cowboy type, just shooting the breeze. And
he's talking to the teller. He's brought like a box of rolled coins
that he found,
that he's just had forever.
I think he said he found them in an attic or a basement or something.
Yeah.
Attic.
So he's trying to turn them in, deposit them, whatever it might be, as the brothers come in. Toby kind of sits in the back, kind of just pointing gun at everybody. Tanner kind of gets more in the face with everyone. He hops up on the counter. They do ask the cowboy if he has a gun on him. They take the gun out of his pocket, put it on the countertop.
Very, very classic Texas answer, by the way. They're like, "Oh man, you got a gun on you?" He said, "Hell yeah, I got a gun on me."
Yeah, very Texas.
He's so unthreatened.
Yeah.
And my other favorite thing that he said was, "Are y'all really robbing this place? Y'all ain't even Mexican."
Oh, yeah, he does say something very racist, which is exactly what I would expect.
He's the most unbothered man.
Expect that to say. While they're robbing this bank, we do learn that they specifically want not the vault, but the drawers full of cash. Right. And they tell the teller only loose bills, 1s, 5s, 10s, and 20s, nothing above a 20, no large bills, nothing in a bundle.
Right.
This is to avoid any sort of ink packs, or with like the hundreds, they could more easily kind of
track it.
I guess track it is sort of what they imply later on in the movie, but maybe having that large of a sum of money might raise some more red flags. Whereas if you have a few thousand or whatever in 5s, 1s, whatever kind of mixed up, looks a little less suspicious, I suppose.
In these like small, quiet towns.
Yeah. So they do get the money and they go to leave, and as they also do say they don't want the old man's money. They just want the bank's money. They're not taking anything from the cowboy, just the bank.
Right.
They go and they leave the bank, and as they're leaving the bank, the cowboy goes, "Oh, hell no," and takes his gun and starts to shoot at them.
Yeah. The funny thing to note is that they said, when they asked him, "Do you have a gun?" and he said, "Yeah," one of them took it, but instead of keeping it, he sat it back down on the bank counter. So, and then they just left. So, obviously, the old man's like, "Well, my gun's right there. I'm going to go grab it." And
as I would expect most, especially older Texans to do who carry firearms like that, gonna take the law into his own hands.
Yep. Sure is.
They do manage to escape, no big deal. There is
have a couple good rounds.
Yeah, there is a comment from Tanner being like, "Why did you put the gun back next to him?
Why'd you put it down? Why didn't you just take it?
Like, throw it away next time or keep it or something." We do see they drive this car of theirs back to like a ranch. To this, basically, they've already pre-dug this hole that's deep enough and large enough that they put the car in neutral and just push it into the hole.
Yeah.
And then they've got a backhoe that they're putting the dirt back on top of. They're basically burying the car.
Right.
And then they get into another vehicle and drive away.
Right.
So it's very, very clear they've planned this out.
Yeah.
What to do, how to dispose of the vehicle. They're very clearly not using like their own personal vehicle that could be traced directly back to them. So it's very, very, very coordinated.
While it does seem very chaotic at times, it's also balanced out methodically. That they have put thought into it.
We're introduced at this point to our Texas Rangers. Again, Jeff Bridges is basically ready to retire, or Marcus. We only hear his name, I want to say, once near the end of the movie, or maybe once or twice, but from like once on a news report, and then another character finally at some point actually says it. I don't think anybody does before that.
Mm-hmm.
And then Alberto, we hear quite a few times from Jeff Bridges.
Right.
So Alberto comes up to Marcus and hands him this like police report of a couple banks being robbed, and he assumes at first that the FBI are probably just wanting their assistance, but he says nope, the FBI aren't going to touch it because Texas Midland Banks is only in Texas, and the amount of money stolen has only been a few $1,000s.
Right.
So it's not a ton.
They're not going to waste their time.
Right. So it's their job. They're going out to take a look at it. So they head off to the banks to get some to look at the crime scene, I guess.
Their back and forth, their banter is hilarious. It is such comedic relief in the movie because we are constantly, Jeff Bridges' character is constantly making little jabs at his partner. Like he makes a comment like, "Why are you always copying what I'm wearing at work?" And the guy's like, "It's a uniform. We're all wearing it. Leave me alone." But yeah, they're very, very funny, and Jeff Bridges' character is constantly making sort of racial jokes at him.
No, he's definitely making racist jokes towards him at times.
I thought your people like this, and I thought your people like that, and then he always gets checked because the guy like is used to his crotchety attitude, so he knows how to snap back at him. So their balance is, their chemistry is top tier.
Yeah, it's very clear that the jokes and stuff do annoy Alberto, but also at the same time, he kind of digs back at Marcus in his own sort of way, and it's clear that they do have kind of respect for each other. But it's kind of like the old man who's ready to leave and the younger whippersnapper. Although he's definitely younger than Jeff Bridges, but he doesn't seem so much younger.
He's not like a rookie or anything.
Yeah.
He's definitely older, just not as old as Jeff Bridges. But it is funny. Jeff Bridges will make a racial joke about him, and then he'll make a comment about him being, wow, I'm really gonna miss this when you're, sitting in your wheelchair out on your porch, you old man, kind of thing.
Yeah. We do learn at this point that the brothers are kind of hanging out in a house. We learn at this point a couple things about them. One, their mother was bedridden for a few months before she eventually passed away, and her dying was a matter of weeks ago. And we learned that Tanner was unaware, and he's not sure why Toby never reached out to him for assistance. And he's like, well, what were you gonna do anyway? And he's like, I get it, I'm only good to rob banks with. But we do learn that Tanner has been to prison before, and has only been out for not too long.
Yeah.
Maybe a year or so.
Which kind of explains a little bit of why he's so overexcited, maybe, about things. Like, he seems very, very excited.
We also learned that because the mother died, she had left everything to Chris Pine, including this ranch. But they're going to be losing it soon due to foreclosure or mortgage payments haven't been, or a reverse mortgage and back taxes.
Right.
So the bank is looking to repossess it,
right.
Which means that they'd potentially lose it. Which gives us the first indication of why they're robbing the banks to begin with, is because they did not want to lose it. Mm-hmm. We also learned that the reason that Tanner went to prison, or it's kind of hinted at here, but I feel like it's pretty clear, although we do get it reiterated again later on in the movie, is that the reason Tanner ended up going to prison is that he always sort of butted heads with their father.
Right.
And the way that Toby viewed it was you never learned your lesson to just not to talk back, don't question things, and they wouldn't beat you so much. And he's like, you're right. And that's why I ended up shooting that fucker.
Yeah.
So we learned basically he killed his father.
Yeah.
And he went to prison for it.
Yeah. He said something along the lines of you never understood that when you talk back, he would beat us more. And he's like, yeah, no, I understand that. I know that. And that's why I did what I did. So we get to see. I mean, I don't remember if they do say it. It's the assumption that he was abusive to the mother as well.
Yeah, I think he was just outright abusive to everyone.
He was just like a shitty, abusive, shit kicker. And,
shit kicker, yeah.
And so Tanner, being the, I don't know, between the two of them, being the one that wants to like stand up and be bolder, whereas Chris Pine's character is quieter, just took matters into his own hands and said, "Fuck it, I'll go to jail. I don't care." And so at least that freed the mom and Chris Pine's character from that abuse. So he kind of took one for the team.
Yeah. We do see the Texas Rangers show up at the first bank, and they meet a random guy. Like, as they're getting out of their car and they're about to go into, like, the crime scene, just a random guy drives by with his truck with almost like a horse carrier. I don't know what they're called. Like the thing that you hitch onto the back of your truck and you put a horse into.
Trailer?
A horse trailer. I don't know what it's called. But he stops and he's like, "What's going on here?" And Jeff Bridges is just like, "Oh, some boys robbed the bank." And he makes probably the most Texas comment ever to be like, "Well, if I run into those," or so he hands him his card. He's like, "If you see anybody looking suspicious, let me know." And he's like, "If I find people looking at me sideways, I'll hang them."
Yeah.
And Jeff Bridges just kind of laughs and then's like, "I love West Texas."
He says something along the lines of, the guy says something like, "Well, if someone looks at me sideways, I'll take care of it myself." And I feel like Jeff Bridges said something, it was something along the lines of, "I'm pretty sure the only person that would be bad for would be you. So maybe don't do that."
Yeah.
But also it is we're very nosy folk. Very nosy.
You are very nosy people.
I am very nosy.
Again, we reiterate, basically they learn that they're only taking small bills, only loose bills. Jeff Bridges makes a comment that it's very smart that they're doing that. Mm-hmm. They also learn that they don't have any working video cameras in the bank.
None of the small town banks. They're running off of like VHS old shit that doesn't work. And it was like a thing that kept coming up, like, "Don't you have surveillance?" And they're like, "No, we don't need it.
Yeah,
we handle things ourselves."
Yeah, and they there's also a comment in here. They're asking the teller, like, what they look like. She's like, "Well, they had masks on." He's like, "Yeah, but could you tell? Are they white, Mexican, like what?" And he's like, "Oh, they're white." There's a comment that I get a chuckle out of it just because we happen to live in Dallas. Is they say, "Like them thugs in Dallas."
Oh my god, that was so funny. That was hilarious. I could tell by the way that they spoke. Sound like one of them.
Oh, that they're
thugs.
local. They're not like them thugs in Dallas.
Yeah, not like them thugs in Dallas. That's a West Texas accent.
It's very funny.
So funny.
Marcus does figure out more or less that they're trying to get a certain amount of money, and probably aren't done yet.
Right.
Just because, well, they're taking such small amounts. They hit 2 banks in a row. Specifically the same banks where they seemingly know that maybe they lucked out or knew that there were camera issues in just these Midland banks already.
These branches. But
he assumes that they're trying to get to a certain amount, which means they're probably not done quite yet. So they got to figure out their next step. We do find out also as well that Chris Pine is really doing this, one, to save the ranch and everything, but the reason he's doing that is because he's not going to give anything to Tanner, but he's passing it all on to his children. Right. So he's got 2 kids with an estranged ex-wife.
Who he owes child support
who he owes a ton of child support to as well, yep. We learn this while they're sitting at a diner having just some random breakfast at an old random-ass diner in a small-ass town.
Have you, did I ask this when we watched it? Have you ever been to one of those middle-of-nowhere diners?
I can't say a middle-of-nowhere diner, no.
I've been to a couple in the middle of nowhere, and it is exactly like that. Except everyone's smoking cigarettes. I mean, probably not now. They probably did that, but...
Maybe. Tanner does say, like, you know, we have enough money. You could pay back that child support. And he's like, nope, we got to get the stuff by Friday to give it to the bank to get, you know, fix the issues with the ranch. And Tanner's like, okay, well, I'm going to go to the bathroom. You pay the check. And he gets up and he leaves the table. But we see in the background that he's not going to the bathroom.
Nope.
He walked across the street into a bank across the street.
Yeah.
While we're seeing him do that, like in the background, Pine does stay behind, and he speaks with the waitress.
She kind of sets herself down. She's like a little curious about him. I love this actress too. She's such a great actress. I've seen her in other things, but she's kind of one of those cliche diner waitresses, like, hey sugar, hey honey, how's life treating you, you know, types. And she's very curious about his story and wants to sit down and talk to him for a minute.
Yeah, so this is Katie Mixon. I might be mispronouncing that last name. It's like Dixon, but with an M instead, so Mixon. The thing I know her most from was she was in Eastbound and Down.
Oh.
That show, and I watched that show because Danny McBride, and it was hilarious, and she was good in it. So
I never saw that, but she did play the sister in Melissa McCarthy's TV show, which I forget what it was called.
I have no idea.
She played a sister on that, and she was very sassy there. But yeah, she's playing the very cliche diner waitress role, and just, you know, kind of
Mike and Molly.
Mike and Molly, that's it. And just asking him questions.
Yeah, so she's being like very overtly flirty with him.
Very.
He's Chris Pine. He's, you know.
We don't get a lot of those around here.
Yeah. So she's being very flirty with him, and he's. I think he's sort of picking it up on it, but also seems slightly indifferent because he's focusing on what they are trying to do
and not garner attention.
Yeah. We learn through this that he worked for the gas company, and it doesn't pay very much because they're not really drilling anymore for gas. Now it's all about oil and stuff. Right. And he ends up, basically she just smiles, leaves him the bill, and walks away. And he pulls out a wad of cash, and he starts to like take it out to be like, okay, how much should I leave? And then just leaves the whole thing.
Which is like a ton of money. But it's also really cute too. Before their interaction ends, is, you know, while she is asking him about like, well, what do you do for work? What did you do? And he tells her about the gas stuff. She does at one point say, well, you know, we do need a cook.
Oh yeah, she does say we need a cook.
If you want to work here with me, you can work here. And I forget what he says. I think he says something like, I don't cook or something like that. But
and she's like, neither does ours.
Oh, yeah, so. Neither does ours. So she's like, it's something to think about.
Yeah.
Which is really sweet.
We do see Tanner in the bank real quick. He runs up to this girl. He only has the ski mask on and gloves. He does not have their like black hoodie and stuff that they were using at the other banks. So he's still in his button-down, stereotypical what you'd expect a cowboy sort of be wearing, like a flannel button-down shirt. Points a gun right in her face.
Yeah.
Give me all your cash. Same sort of thing that he normally does, just straight out of the drawer. And gets all the money that he can. Stuffs it in his shirt because he doesn't have bags with him. And we see him as Chris Pine is leaving, as Toby's leaving the diner. He's running out of the bank with cash flying everywhere, going, "Start the car! Start the car!"
Hauling ass. Not to mention, this diner is like all windows. Have you ever seen a Waffle House? That's basically what it looked like. All windows. So everyone can see what's going on. And they parked in the very front.
Yeah. yeah, which is hilarious because if it wasn't a small town and there was a ton of people there,
oh yeah,
it'd be very easy to catch.
Very easy.
One side note: the teller at that bank is played by Amber Midthunder.
I take props for that because I did say
you did point out that she looked familiar.
I said she looks familiar. Did we see her in a scary movie?
Yeah, and she played. Most recently, in a movie just from last year, she was the main character, Naru, in Prey.
Prey.
Which we did really like. That was quite a good movie. But it's crazy that you recognized her from 6 years earlier.
Yeah. Every once in a while.
Yeah. You pick things up like that. It's crazy. As they're leaving, as they're driving away, Chris Pine's just kind of like, "What are you doing? You've just like,
Why did you do
messed
that?
You messed that up. Why would you do that? We're only going to Texas Midland Banks." And he's like, "Well, now I have to spend a whole day getting another car. Now we're off track on what we're doing." And Tanner just replies like, "I got us ahead of track earlier today by doing 2 banks, and now we're even more ahead of everything. So you can spend the day looking for a new car tomorrow."
My literal note, my bullet point at this point, I wrote, "The brother is such a dipshit."
Mm-hmm.
Like, why would you just willy-nilly decide to go outside of the plan, not tell me what you were going to do, and now I'm the one driving the car. Everyone basically saw us. Why would you put us in that situation?
Yeah.
He's so reckless right now.
Yeah, so they drive off to Tanner's home. He's living in a trailer, just, again, out in the middle of nowhere off the side of some country road somewhere. And basically he says that he's being allowed to live there because he shoots the coyotes. The coyotes for the guy. He goes inside. Basically, the most important part about this is basically he grabs a couple rifles from there and puts them into the trunk.
Like long-range rifles.
Like an actual sniper rifle or
Yeah.
hunting rifle. I don't know what exactly you'd call it in an actual assault rifle, which we will see later on. And he's taking them with him because he says, like, you got to get them out of your house.
God bless you.
Whew.
Get those demons out.
Sorry. But basically he just says you got to take them out of your house every once in a while.
Yeah.
He doesn't have plans on using them or anything. You just got to get them out of the house.
Keep them on rotation.
I guess. I don't know how guns work.
That's what I do with all of my rifles.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
You just hide them very well?
Yep.
The Texas Rangers show up at the bank that was just robbed.
Yeah.
They talk to the girl inside, where they learn that it was only one robber that time. They're like, wait, what? That doesn't sound right. And she's like, well, yeah, he ran off to like a car at the diner next door, and somebody drove away with him. And they're like, oh, okay. So they go to the diner next door, or Marcus, Jeff Bridges alone, goes to the diner next door, and when he gets in there,
Oh, it's so funny.
he asks to speak to the waitress who helped the 2 boys, and there's a table of like 3 older cowboy-looking guys.
Which, again, if you've ever been to like some podunk diner, there is always a group of men that are gonna sit there for 4 hours just drinking black coffee and shooting the breeze. So sure enough, there's just a bunch of old cowboys. They've been there the whole time, and they're up against the window.
Yeah, and Marcus is like, did you see these 2 boys? And like, oh yeah, they were sitting right there. And he's like, oh, did you see what happened? He's like, yeah, I saw him robbing that bank, which has been robbing me for years.
Yeah.
So it's just like, okay, so you didn't really care.
Very unbothered.
It kind of gets a chuckle out of Marcus. I think he just loves these old-timey people being like,
they're kind
fuck
of
it.
like his kin a little bit.
Yeah. He does eventually talk to the waitress. This is where we learn that Toby left her a $200 tip. And Marcus is trying to say, like, okay, well, I'm going to need that money because it's evidence. And she just snaps on him.
She is so sassy before he even opens his mouth, asking him questions. You know, did you see did you see any handsome men? And she's like, how would you know if I saw any handsome men? And he's like, well, I mean, what is it he says? He says something like, well, I would assume if there were these 2 gentlemen that weren't from around here, something like that. And she's like, is it a crime to go to a diner and be handsome and tip someone? And he's like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna need that.
We get to see... The scene does a little bit to further show you how intelligent Marcus is. That while it kind of looks like he's goofing around and laughing with these people, he's picking up on just such small little details that it's clear that he's like piecing things together in his
Yeah.
mind to figure out what's happening. And where his partner sees like, okay, well, they hit these 3 banks, he knows like, well, no, they didn't mean to do that.
Yeah.
The one hot-headed guy went and did it on his own for some reason. That was not part of the plan.
Right.
Whereas the other ones was on
Calculated,
purpose. They
yeah.
had to do those ones. Or, well, they didn't have to, but they planned to do
But
those
yeah,
ones.
but it was calculated. But it is pretty funny that she basically says that she doesn't want to answer any questions. She doesn't know anything. And he picks up on
yeah,
that.
he's like, did you talk to him? Yeah, but they didn't tell me they was going to rob a bank.
Yeah. And then he's like, what did he tip you? And she kind of has like this moment where she doesn't want to say anything. And he's like, no, how much money did he give you? And she said, $200. And he goes, well, we're going to need that. And she goes, well, he gave it to me before he robbed the bank, so that's technically my tip. And he goes, before they robbed this bank,
Yeah.
not the other bank. So that we still need that money. She basically tells him to go shove it. She's like, that's half my mortgage. So,
Which is crazy.
yeah, which is pretty crazy. So she's like, I'm not giving anybody
So,
my
yeah,
money.
she refuses to give the money. When Alberto comes in, Marcus does say, go talk to that sassy waitress in the back and get that money.
Doesn't he say something like that sassy big lady in the
Yeah,
back?
the sassy big lady
He
in the
calls
back.
her big. Oh, yeah. He says, go get that money from her. And as the guy goes to walk away, the group of the old cowboys goes, good luck with that.
Yeah.
She's not going to give that up easy.
We cut back to the brothers, and we see that they're going across state lines into Oklahoma.
By the way, I would keep the money, too.
Yeah. You would not. You'd give it right away.
You think I would?
Oh, I know you would.
Yeah, probably.
As they cross the border into Oklahoma, they stop quickly at a gas station. In this scene, it does serve a purpose in kind of showing that Toby will do anything for his brother or for his family, but the scene ultimately isn't necessarily needed, but it is funny, and I enjoy this scene for basically the line of dialogue at the end of it.
It is funny.
When they stop at this gas station, Tanner stays inside the car, and Toby goes inside, and Tanner asks him to get him a Dr. Pepper and some cigarettes. I forget exactly which kind. But as he's sitting there, his head's just leaned back.
It looks like he's taking a nap.
He almost looks like what you're told turkeys do when it rains, which is look straight up into the sky with their mouth open and just drown themselves.
I've never heard that.
You've never heard that?
No.
I don't know if it's actually a thing, but I've heard it so many times that turkeys just like look up with their mouths agape.
And they drown?
And I don't know. Turkeys are dumb, I think is
He
the
looks
point.
like he's just like slouched back.
Yeah, anyway. This green car that's supposed to be like a nice sports car, I guess.
It is this putrid neon green Fast and the Furious looking car. Just vrooms right up. It is hideous.
Yeah, yes. But the funny thing is, again, knowing people in Texas and having lived here for a long amount of time, I know people who are into cars just like that. Not
Oh, yeah.
necessarily the color or ugly color or whatever, but like that's very much a staple for a
Yeah.
younger crowd. So,
You see that a lot.
um,
Especially in Dallas.
so they come in and they just randomly start. Tanner asks them to turn off whatever music they're listening to.
Does
It's screamo music, and he's just like, "Could you just turn that shit off?" Basically, and they're like, "What, old man? What? You want to start something, old man?" And he says, the guy in the green car puts a gun on the side of it to act like a gangster and all
yeah,
threatening.
like threatening.
And Tanner's reply to him is, "Oh, if we fight, you'd think there were 10 of me."
Yeah.
Which is such a weirdly confusing thing to say to somebody that I think if I was angry and wanted to fight someone and they just said, "Oh, you'd think there was 10 of me," I'd be like,
What?
no, no, never mind, man,
What?
forget it. I think I'd just be so confused by the comment that I just, like, I get what he's trying to say, but I'd have to pause for a moment to think about that, and then I'd just go, you know what, this isn't worth it.
It's very clear and obvious that these like young kids in their like what they think is a cool car and he's got a gun, they think very big of themselves, and so they're like wanting to pick a fight with anyone that they could. And I don't know why they'd be pulling up into some middle of the nowhere gas station like that. But yeah, they're basically like, we're tough shit. Oh, you want some of this? I got a gun, man.
Yeah.
And what I love the most too is that they're clearly even more bothered by how unbothered he is.
Right.
Like he's not phased
Yeah,
at all.
he hasn't even moved
He
or
hasn't
anything.
moved
He's
his
still
head.
just sitting there.
He's still got his turkey. His head
his
tilted back like
his turkey thing. Yeah, his head's still like
Yeah.
leaned back into the seat, which
Yeah.
I can kind of get if you have like something in between your neck to kind of rest on
Yeah.
doing that.
It
But just
does
in a
look
car
little-
seat, I can
It looked
imagine.
a little uncomfortable.
So the driver, still getting like more aggro, opens up the door and gets out. And just as he's standing up, Toby comes out, punches him in the gut, smashes his head onto the door frame, then smashes it into the side of the car, and then the guy just falls.
Yeah.
And then he doesn't stop there. He walks around to the passenger side,
So funny.
opens up the passenger's door, and the passenger's like, "Bro, not me, dude, not me." And he just leaves him be.
What did he say? He was like, he's out of line. I didn't know what he was gonna say.
Right? Yeah. He's like, "Not me. I'm not a part of this. I'm not a part of this."
Please don't beat me. And then he just like.
Yeah, he
slams
just
the
shuts
car
the door. Toby gets back into the seat and kind of throws the grocery bag
Yeah.
onto Tanner as they drive off. Tanner shouts out the window real quick, "Tanner me!" like you didn't do anything, dude. But as they're driving away, this is the line that cracks me up. As he goes, "You just want to make me mad, don't you?" And he's like, "Huh?" And he goes, "I said I wanted a Dr. Pepper. This is a Mr. Pibb."
I didn't have any Dr. Pepper.
And for anybody who knows, like there's
Someone.
a difference.
Someone is a very
There's quite a difference.
hardcore Dr. Pepper fan.
Yeah, there's quite
Because
a
as soon as they said that, we
I-
both looked at each other and I died laughing.
Dr. Pepper's is my, like, if you were to say Coke, Pepsi, whatever, Dr. Pepper for me, every day,
Which is also
every
a
day of the
Texas brand.
week. But if you were to get me a Pibb instead of Dr. Pepper, I'd still be okay with it. Like, I would not pick a Pibb over a Dr. Pepper.
But did you ever have a Dr. Thunder?
But if I was like, hey, get me like a Dr. Pepper or something, and then you came back with like a Dr. Thunder,
Yeah.
then I'd be I'd be kind of disappointed.
Yeah,
Because that's about as generic as you can get.
yeah, that's a big no.
Yeah.
I'm a Coke girly myself. Specifically a McDonald's Coke. It just hits different.
Yeah, huh?
Anyway.
So they take their money to the casino, and this is where their plan gets like really clever, and you can kind of tell that a lot of thought has been put into this. So they bring the money that they robbed to a casino in Oklahoma, and in case you don't know, there's no casinos in Texas.
No.
Technically there's one, but it's on a reservation, so it's not considered part of like the Texas government. On actual Texas land, there's no casinos.
Yeah. When we were younger, like at college age or like early 20s, it would be like a weekend thing or a Friday night thing to go drive over the border to Oklahoma to go hang out at the casino.
Well, aren't you special?
Not really.
I've never been to a casino. Or I've never been to... That's not true. I've been to a casino, I'm pretty sure, in Missouri or Kansas, one of the two. But I was also pretty young then.
Yeah.
I've never, as an adult, to where I could go and actually gamble, I've never been to a casino.
I was old enough to gamble, but I don't gamble and I don't know how to play cards. So I was just
They have slot machines.
I was just tagging along and then like getting drinks. But if you you would go, you do that for a couple hours and then you drive back to Texas. And it is so funny to me that the casino, the way that they did it, it looks exactly like a casino that you would see in Oklahoma. It's people that look like they haven't slept for days. They're all older. There's something gross and weird and old-fashioned about it.
Yeah. So basically the plan is you go into the casino, they bring a few $1,000s, they convert those dollars into chips, and then they hang around until like a shift change or something, and then cash those chips out, basically laundering their money So they're getting rid of whatever they got from the bank and now getting new bills back that can't necessarily be traced to them because it's gone through the casino. While they're doing this, the Tanner does take a handful of chips, and he's like, I'm going to go play some poker.
You have to say my favorite quote of the movie.
He goes to get some more chips, and as he's running away, because Toby's trying to like hold on to as many chips as possible, he's like, don't lose it all. And he just says, eat my ass.
As he's running away, you just distantly hear him yelling, eat my ass.
So Tanner does do... I would think, if I was in this situation, I'd do the same thing Tanner does here. I would take the majority of the chips that we got, keep them to do what we're supposed to do. But do take some, at least if you're, like, confident enough of... Like, I wouldn't say go do a slot machine, because you're gonna waste way more chips than you'd actually end up gaining, probably. But if you know how to play poker or blackjack or something where there is... Like, you have a reasonable chance of actually potentially winning chips, going and doing that. I would take some of those chips, like maybe a little sleeve of them, and go and play some, like, Texas Hold'em or blackjack or something. Because I'm reasonably confident that I'd be able to make a profit and then would be able to leave with more than we lost, or more than we came in with.
I like to I have a thought process. No one has ever taught me how to play poker, but I'd like to think that maybe if someone did, I could be really good at it, and just this whole time I've been sitting on a potential talent, and then I could have been like a millionaire or something. I don't know. I could have maybe won a tournament, but no one's taken the time
Yeah.
to teach me.
I've offered many times.
Have you?
Yes.
Oh, there's
And
a
you
lot.
can't say I haven't.
There's a lot of numbers. What's the one that I can play that you taught me?
What did I teach you?
Adding and subtracting.
Adding and subtracting.
What was that?
I
You
do
taught
not
me.
know.
You taught me what? No, you laid it out, and I kept coming downstairs and being like, "Okay, do it again," where you lay out the cards.
Yeah, that
and
was
then-
poker. That was
Oh.
Texas Hold'em. I was showing you hands and saying which one of these wins.
Oh, then maybe I do know it a little bit.
So while the younger brother's playing some Texas Hold'em, we do see that he's winning. So he's got quite a stack of chips on his own.
Right.
So it's profitable. It's a good idea. At the table is a native playing as well, and he makes a remark to be like, "Don't chase me, Injun," or something like that.
Oh yeah.
And the guy takes off his glasses
Chief.
and kind of... Chief, maybe?
Don't chase me, Chief.
Yeah. He takes off his glasses and kind of gives him this, like, glare.
Yeah.
And
Like, the
as
fuck
they're
did you
sitting
say?
there, he goes, "What are you, Comanche?" And the guy just nods his head and then calls. The guy ends up winning, so he beats Tanner in this hand, and Tanner at that point stands up, takes his chips, he's leaving, and the player stands up as well and kind of stands in front of him. He's bigger than him, he's like beefier than him, he's taller than him, and he stands in front of him, and Tanner, you can just, again, does not give a shit.
No.
He just goes, the guy goes, "Do you know what Comanche means?" He goes, "What?" He goes, "It means enemy." He's like, "Oh."
Everyone,
or he says
everyone is my enemy.
he says enemy for enemies, or no, he just says it means enemy. He's like, "Okay, well, who's your enemy?" He's like, "Everyone." He goes, "Oh." He goes, "I guess that makes me a Comanche." He's like, "'Cause I'm your enemy," or everyone's my enemy, or whatever it is that he says.
He's just so clearly arrogant.
Very.
And he's got no filter, and he is just going balls to the wall with whatever it is that he's doing.
Yeah.
Which is not great for someone who just got out of prison.
Right. Toby's sitting at the bar, just kind of having a drink again, kind of waiting for like the shift change to happen. This woman comes up to him, starts kind of flirting with him, very clearly trying to make friends with him and maybe get some chips thrown her way.
She wants to be a saucy friend.
But Tanner comes in and cuts that shit out real quick. He's like, "Hell no, I know what you're doing. You're not taking any money from him. No."
Because she was like, she asked, "Wow, you got a lot of chips there." And then she starts touching his leg, and she's like, "Are you staying in the hotel? Why don't you take me up to your room?" And she says at one point, too, "You look like someone that's missed the touch of a woman." And she touches his cheek, and he kind of melts a little bit, and then that's when we see his brother swoop in, keeping an eye on him and saying, okay, I know what you're trying to do here, and it's not going to work.
Yeah. So they finally convert the chips back into cash, but they get... Tanner reminds them, like, get some spending money.
Right.
So they take $400 in cash and the rest of it in a check made out to Texas Midlands Bank.
Mm-hmm.
So they're stealing from the banks to pay them off with their own money. Clever.
Mm-hmm.
Just a very quick shot here as well. They decide they're staying at that hotel for the night. Tanner flirts with the receptionist.
Mm-hmm.
He says that she says something along the lines of like, you look like trouble, and he's like, yeah, the good kind of trouble, that when you're dying in the nursing home you're gonna think back to me and giggle. And she gets this big old smile on her
She's
face.
like, oh my, oh, you rascal, you. So silly.
We do cut back again to see the Rangers. This is kind of where we're seeing them just kind of ribbing each other back and forth. Marcus is poking fun of Alberto's background the whole time, while Alberto kind of rolls his eyes about the whole thing. But Marcus ends up saying, "You're gonna miss the teasing when I'm gone.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you might not miss anything else, but you're gonna miss the teasing when I'm gone." And Marcus ends up leaving the room because they're in a hotel, but they've got their own separate rooms, and for whatever reason Marcus was hanging out in Alberto's room while he's like laying on his bed,
seems like he's trying to fall asleep.
flossing, trying to go to sleep, talking shit. Marcus does end up leaving, but you do see a little smirk on like Alberto's face to be like, he doesn't really
what was
mind.
the joke that that they did? There was something like Marcus said something to Alberto like, why are you watching a religious TV show, or why do you have something on TV that's like a Christian gospel thing? He's like, don't your people usually like dance around a fire? And he just like deadpans and goes, I'm Catholic.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah. We do. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this.
I hate it.
And how weirdly gross this is. But the brothers stay in the hotel and they get a single room with like twin beds. What Tanner said worked, because that girl shows up and they're getting it on while Toby is rolled over,
covering his ears,
trying to sleep. While that's happening in the same room. No thanks.
Gross. I made a note. I said, that is extremely gross to have sex with your brother in the next bed.
Yeah.
Nasty. They didn't even have the TV on or anything. There's
Yeah.
dead silent in there. Gross.
The next morning or the next day, we do see the brothers talking to like a lawyer to open a trust with those checks that they made out. And this will go towards fixing the reverse mortgage on the property and the back taxes. And the lawyer kind of seems to know what they're doing, because he does make some comments about like, you guys did make this legally at the casino, right? I'd have nothing to lie about or not report as long as you did that. But he's also saying, like, if you really want to cover it up, make Texas Midland Bank control the trust.
Right.
So he's basically like, hey, I kind of support what you're doing.
Yeah.
Which is kind of weird.
It is kind of weird, but also he just heard the entire story of like what the mom was going through when she was sick and how they were coming.
Yeah, but I'm not
after
going to tell
her.
you like I'm robbing a bank.
No, but I think at the same time he said something along the lines of, hey, as a Texan, I don't think there's anything wrong with taking money back from the bank or something like that.
Yeah.
Basically saying like, no, I stand with you and I would probably do the same thing. So he was kind of like under the table, handshake, like, I get you, dude.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say anything about it. And here's a couple fun tips.
Yeah. We see the next... we go back to the Rangers, and this is probably one of the greater scenes in the whole movie. But they go into this little restaurant for breakfast. And they sit down, and this waitress comes up
Oh my
while they're
God,
talking. And the waitress just goes, all right, what don't you want? And they're both like, I'm sorry, what? And she goes, well, what don't you want? And they're like, and Marcus kind of looks at the, like, up on the countertop at, like, what their menu is. And she goes, I've been working here for 40 years. You either don't want, we sell steaks. You either don't want green beans or you don't want mashed taters.
Yeah.
So what don't you want? And Alberto goes, I don't want the green beans. And Marcus goes, yeah, me neither. No green beans. He goes, okay. 2 steaks, mashed taters, cooked medium well. And he goes, actually, I want cooked medium well. And he's like, yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
And then she goes, and iced tea for you?
2 sweet teas.
Sweet tea for you? Sweet tea's fine. Sweet tea, that'll be fine. Okay.
She is what I'd like to think our earlier diner waitress will be like in like her elder years. She's so crass and blunt and to the point. She even says at one point, one time a man came in here and asked us if we had any sea bass. And I said, where do you think we get sea bass from?
Yeah.
We're in the middle of, wherever. No, you get steak. Steak's what you get.
Yeah. Which is hilarious.
It was so funny. But yeah, I loved her character. She acted... There was not a single other person in that diner, and she acted like it was such an imposition that they were there to order. She's like, God, okay, fine.
Yeah.
She sauntered away like it was the most inconvenient thing.
It's just a great little scene. I love it.
It's so funny.
We cut back to Toby. We see that he is gone to see his kids. Again, this is a very, like, southern sort of thing, or maybe an older time thing. If it was 20, 30 years ago, you might still find people sort of doing this. But he knocks on the door, and it's just like the screen door. The actual door's still open. He just knocks on the door, and the person just goes, come in. Doesn't even ask, like, who are you? Who is it? Just come in. He's there to see his kids. It's his ex-wife's place. And clearly they don't have the greatest relationship. But he basically just says, look, my mother's died a few weeks ago. We're fixing things with the ranch. We're going to give it to the boys. And we're putting it into a trust so that nobody can touch it. And she's like, oh, okay. And this is where we find out that the big driving force behind all this is that they found oil there.
Right.
So if they give it to the kids and they let them drill for oil there, you're going to become very rich very quickly.
Yeah. It's also good to note, too, that it's very clear when he says that his mom died, the reaction from the ex was very unfavorable of his mom.
Yeah.
And so she didn't act very remorseful about losing her.
Yeah.
She was, and at some point she said, you can't blame me or something like that. So they didn't have a great relationship.
Right. We then see one of his sons shows up, and he goes outside with his son. His son's got to be a teenager, but he hands him a beer.
He looks like he's like maybe 15, 14.
He hands him a beer. He asks where the other brother is. The other brother's like staying at a friend's house or something. And he just kind of starts talking with his son for a minute and goes, look, your grandmother died. We're going to give you her ranch. And he's like, why? I don't want to be a rancher. He's like, well, because there's oil there, so you're never going to need money again. And he goes, look, in the future, you might hear some things about me and your uncle. And he's like, I'm not going to believe anything anybody says. He goes, no, you believe them, because it's all true.
Yeah.
Like, you believe what you hear. It's true. Assuming that, like, they're going to end up getting caught eventually. But at least they're going to try and do this to provide for them first.
I also kind of took that as the things that you hear about me. I don't know. I kind of got a feeling he also meant, like, maybe why... They don't explain it. They never talk about it. But maybe why him and the mom aren't together anymore. Like, maybe that was a cause from him.
I don't know.
And he could just be like, yeah, whatever shitty stuff I've done, I'm admitting that I did it. and I deserve whatever happens.
Yeah, just be better than me, basically.
Yeah, be better than me.
We cut back to the Rangers, and they decide they're going to do a stakeout in front of a, guess what? Texas Midlands Bank, right there in the small town that they're in. So they're like, look, they're going to have to hit one of these. Sooner or later, they're going to come here, so we'll just wait and we'll catch them in the act. He's confident that the boys will eventually make a mistake.
Yeah.
And that mistake is potentially showing up at that one they're going to be waiting at. We then see the brothers take 2 vehicles to the next bank. A small car and a truck. And the idea is they're going to leave the small car like outside of the town and be able to use that kind of as a getaway if they need to. They get to the first bank, and when they go to try and open the door's chained shut. It's locked. And not just is that bank closed, but that bank branch has been completely closed down. So that location's not even any good anymore.
Right.
So they make the decision to go to another location. They decide, okay, we're going to head to Coleman because we can't go to, I forget where they say. It's not Lubbock, but it's like a relatively big town in Texas. They can't go to that one because it's too big of a city.
Right.
Like, it's too big of a branch. There's no way it'd work. So they decide to go to Coleman because it's a relatively small town, like what they've done before.
Oh, was it Post?
No.
Oh.
We'll get there. It's something else. It's like, I'll just say Lubbock to say Lubbock. It's not Lubbock. It's something else. It's another big town that's out there.
Which I have been to, and they did have middle of the nowhere diners.
Well, Lubbock is kind of in the middle of nowhere.
It is. It's like an island.
Yeah. Lubbock's on the map because of Buddy Holly.
Sure is.
And also, I think Texas Tech is out there.
Good job.
Yeah. Okay, look, I'm
so proud of you.
I know some things. So they decide to go to the different location. They're heading to a town called Coleman to go there because they think it's going to be similar to the other banks they've already done. Small enough and early enough that there won't be many people there.
Right.
The Rangers at this point figure out that maybe they're not going to come to this location because it's already getting pretty late in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And they sort of look at the map and they decide, okay, well, they're not going to go to this location because that location's already closed. And they're not going to this town because that's too big of a town. They're only hitting the small branches. So it's either Coleman or Post.
And this is all Marcus.
Yeah. So he decides we're going to head to Post because that's where they're going. They're going to go to Post. But we know that they've decided against that. However, as the Rangers decide to leave, we cut back to the brothers, and Tanner cuts Toby off and says, look, by the time we get to Coleman, it's going to be the middle of the afternoon. We don't want to go there during the lunch rush. Mm-hmm. We have to go to Post because we'll get there early enough there won't be many people. So they change their plan and decide to go to Post.
Also, this is a Friday. To know.
Right. So they decide to go to Post, which does mean that we're leading into a head-on collision between the brothers and the 2 Rangers at this point. They get to the bank in Post, and Toby thinks that it's too big. They realize it's actually a lot bigger than they thought it was going to be.
Much bigger than the other one.
But it's too late. They're already there. They have to do it. They break into the bank, and it is full of people.
It is jam-packed, and it is payday.
Yeah.
One of them says. So that's why there's a fuck ton of people.
So, yeah, there's probably like 30 people in here, multiple tellers. They get everybody on the ground. Toby, again, is like frantically kind of pointing his gun all over the place. Tanner gets behind the counter. He very, like, militarily instructs the tellers, like, stand up, unlock your drawers, empty your drawers.
Get on your knees.
All those things. So while they're doing that, we see one girl, like, text to somebody that, like, they're robbing the bank. We see another guy slowly trying to, like, reach for his pistol. We see in the back the security guy was, like, in the bathroom or something. He's kind of sneaking around. And all of it very quickly comes to a head when Tanner sees the security guard shoots at Toby. Tanner gets up, shoots and kills the security guard, then sees the other guy kind of hold up behind a little island table thing, just kind of in the middle of the lobby. Tanner jumps up on top of that, shoots that guy in the head,
Square in the head.
and then they get out, and as they're leaving, there's just a line of trucks of random citizens with their guns unloading at them.
You could not have picked like a worse group of like everyone is carrying.
Yeah.
This part of town, everyone's got concealed weapons licenses. Everyone's got a gun. So they're all just
They're all just unloading.
They're unloading. This is like I'm just going to go ahead and say it. There are some people in Texas who enjoy carrying their guns that they dream for this sort of scenario.
Yeah.
This is they think that they're going to be the hero. This is my time to shine. I'm going to take this person down. So it's just bullets everywhere.
Right.
Just the absolute worst possible case scenario that could have happened.
So they do manage to get in the truck and get away. All of the citizens who are shooting at them get in hot pursuit. There's like 5 vehicles or something in total.
Yeah. Just a bunch of just truckfuls of good old boys. You know?
Yeah, the good old boys, yeah. We do see that Toby was shot. He's got a bullet that seems to have gone in and out in like his lower right abdomen. So they kind of apply some pressure there, try and bandage it up the best that they can. They get enough of a lead on these people chasing them that they make it to the car they left outside of the town. Toby gets in that car, and Tanner does not. Tanner says, look, I'm going to draw off the heat. You go to the casino like we planned and get the shit done with the bank. Like, you have to go do that.
Yeah. Because they're on a timeline.
Right.
They're on a time crunch. Again, this is Friday, and they have to have this done by a certain time, so they can't stop and go to an urgent care, basically.
Right. They did take one break during this because of the people following them, that they stopped the truck, and Tanner pulled out his assault rifle and just kind of blindly shot at them to kind of scare them off a little bit, but it didn't get them to go away. It just kind of gave them a bigger lead to give them time to do this split.
A head start.
Before the brothers go their separate ways, they do say I love you to each other, showing that they do, they really cared, and that's why Tanner was doing this. Not while he might enjoy the act of robbing and stuff and not have qualms about like taking somebody's life, he is doing this out of love for his brother and wanting to help take care of his nephews, basically. Right. So they go their separate ways. The Tanner does run into the police, and he leads them up into the hills of Texas.
I think this is also a way, like, with them breaking off from each other, I think this is also Tanner saying, I'm kind of the fuck up between the two of us.
Right.
I can do this. You've got a lot going for you. If I get arrested, if something bad happens to me, you're still good. You've still got a plan.
Yeah. We see Toby at one point does come into like a checkpoint. Like the police have sectioned off a road, and he kind of hides that he's bleeding, gives the officer his ID, says, I'm going up to the casino, whatever. It's a little tense moment, but he gets through. Although the cop makes some weird looking faces and shit to make it seem like something, it's just trying to build tension. But they're weird faces to make and looks to have when it's like, you're good.
Everything's fine.
Like, everything's fine. He kind of like glances at the other officers like, we got a guy here.
Yeah, like when he takes his ID and he's checking it in the cop car, he looks over at another cop, and they both kind of nod at each other. Like, why would you do that?
It's just a weird way to build like false. Obviously, it's just to build up tension and stuff, but it's just a strange thing because it doesn't feel natural when you eventually are just like, all right, you're good to go.
Yeah.
Have a good day.
This is your face. Okay.
I don't know. It just felt kind of weird. So he gets through. He set it off into Oklahoma. We go back to Tanner. He's kind of taking the truck up this hill. He lights fire to like a propane tank and then gets out of the vehicle while he grabs his rifle. So he lets it roll backwards down the hill. It crashes into one of the police vehicles and explodes, kind of blocking this little dirt road that they were going up. He runs up into the hills, takes off the cover of this rifle, so we now see that he's got like this hunting rifle, sniper rifle type thing, and he's just taking like pot shots at the police down there. It's a barricade of police. We see Marcus and Alberto show up, and they get out of their vehicles and they take cover. Alberto has a rifle with a scope on it, and he's kind of leaning over the trunk of the car real quick. There was a comment earlier that Marcus kind of sucks at shooting and that Alberto would do the shooting. So while they're sitting here and Marcus is trying to figure out, like, oh, we got to get behind him, what are we going to do? Alberto gets shot in the head.
Was it in the eye, though?
I don't think so. I think it's just in the head.
My hands went over my mouth and I gasped.
Yeah.
I was so upset.
Marcus does manage to kind of pull Alberto's body behind the car. You can see that he did actually care for this guy
so
here.
upset.
That while he was kind of ribbing him, it was sort of like a brotherly sort of ribbing, kind of making fun of. Because he's very sad, very upset about it.
That's heartbreaking.
We see over the hill come all the citizens again. Marcus is waving them off like, get out of here, what the fuck are you doing? He does jump in the car with one of them and goes, how well do you know the land around here? And the guy's like, I know it like the back of my hand. He goes, okay, you see the brush up back there? I need to get there. He goes, well, it might take, he goes, give me 30 minutes, I'll have that man hog-tied, whatever. And he's like, no, just get me there.
Yeah.
I'll deal with it.
Again, we've got a bunch of good old boys that want to be vigilantes, that want to help be, a hero.
Yeah. Marcus does get taken up behind the hills. The citizen's still with him. He kind of like let him on foot, I guess, as well. And he brought his rifle, and he's like, all right, give me, I'll take the shot. He's like, oh, the hell you will. I'm doing it. So he takes the guy's rifle, and he sits up on the hill. The civilian has got like binoculars with him. He's kind of scoping it out, being like, all right, he's to the left of that bush. And he's like, I see him. They got SWAT now, but Tanner's still kind of shooting them off, kind of taking pot shots at them.
It's also good to know, too, that the little vigilante friend that's helping Jeff Bridges' character is, like, you can tell that he's seeing that he's kind of, like, out of breath and older. And so that's why he's like, are you sure you don't want me to do this?
I don't think it was this guy, but one of the cowboys in this movie at some point is Taylor Sheridan. He was an actor too. He was in Sons of Anarchy and some other stuff as well before going into mostly writing and directing stuff. Cool. So he placed himself somewhere in this movie, or got placed into the movie. Tanner ends up taking a break from shooting at everybody, and he sits down for a minute while he's kind of reloading. He's kind of breathing in the air, kind of looking around, and he makes the comment of, Lord of the Plains.
Lord of the Plains.
That's me. And then as he does that, he kind of looks over his shoulder to see Marcus up on this hill behind him with a rifle, and he sees him just in time, and then boom, shot right in the head. Tanner's been killed.
Just like the sound of a shot, and then he slumped over.
Yep.
Just like that.
We cut back to Toby at the hotel. He's again sitting at the bar, just kind of having some drinks.
The hotel casino.
Yeah. We see a news story going on, talking about the day's events.
Behind him in the background.
Mentioning that a man was killed by Texas Ranger Marcus Hamilton. So that I think that's the first, maybe second time we hear Marcus's name. But first time I kind of really remember it happening. After that, Toby leaves. He gets to the bank in time to pay off the reverse mortgage and the back taxes, as well as set up the trust for the bank to manage. He is kind of like grumpy. Obviously, he's, his brother just died. He's kind of pissed at the bank still, but they're like, wow, if good thing you did this when you did. And it's like, all right, don't try and be friendly to me. Like, we were in this position because of you.
Yeah, and there is at one point where the person at the bank that he's working with is like, yeah, I can do this fax like by the end of next week.
Oh yeah, he's like, yeah, I can fax this by the end of the week, and goes, it is the end of the week.
This is Friday.
I'll
this
wait.
Is the end of the week.
He's
I
like-
will watch you do it.
It's very awkward.
It was very awkward, but he's so intimidating in this moment that the guy, you can tell the guy is like, oh, okay, sure, sir.
After the stuff with the bank, we cut forward in time. I don't think it says exactly how long, but we just have cut forward in time. We see Marcus show back up to the Texas Ranger offices, I guess, and he meets with this woman who seemingly took his position, and he basically asks to look over the files about the Tanner case again, and he's looking back through it, and he just is like, did you guys ever check into the brother? And they're like, we did. He has no records. He's got no priors. Nothing. He's clean. There's nothing to tie him to this. Everything makes sense with Tanner because he's robbed stuff before. He killed his father in a supposed hunting accident. He's done time. It makes sense. But the brother, it doesn't make sense to.
She says the only time that the brother has ever been in a courtroom was during his divorce.
Right. Yeah. So Marcus sits there. He goes home. We see him kind of at his home. And this is the part where I say this might give you a feeling of No Country for Old Men. Because No Country for Old Men ends with Tommy Lee Jones basically sitting at table having breakfast with his wife, just reading a newspaper. And I remember the first time ever watching No Country for Old Men. We watched it at home. So like a family watched it. And I remember at the end my mother being like, that ending was dumb. Like, I didn't understand. I didn't get, like, she didn't get the ending, or she just didn't like the ending.
So many people think that's the best ending to a movie.
Because it's a great ending.
Yeah, it's incredible.
But it's in a similar vein of, we see Marcus at home. He's, like, sitting on his porch. You can tell that he's sort of contemplating, still trying to run through the case in his brain. He sits down at one point, like, pets his dog, is watching some, like, football or something on TV.
Having a beer.
And then he finally just, unlike Tommy Lee Jones, decides he has enough and he has to go search for the answers. So he drives out to the ranch that Toby and Tanner saved. And he walks up and he sees Toby. And Toby's holding like a shotgun.
Yeah.
And he goes, look.
Toby also he looks like he was expecting him. Or at least he saw him coming from like a mile away.
Yeah, I feel like he probably saw him coming. He basically says, look, I just want to talk. I'm retired. I can't arrest you or anything. I just want to talk. And Toby's like, you know I could shoot you, right? He's like, for trespassing? He's like, you'd be well within your rights if you want to. Mm-hmm. He's like, do you got a gun on you? And he's like, what do you think? Yeah. He's like, but would you mind if we just talked? And he's like, sure, come on. So he goes and he sits down on his porch. Toby offers him a beer, gives him a Shiner Bock, which, as you said, is a Texas brand.
I did. It's Shiner. A lot of Texans drink Shiner Bock, and it's a Texas beer. It tastes disgusting.
I don't like beer, period. Beer is pretty disgusting. So
my parents used to drink it a lot.
So he sits there, and they just kind of talk a little bit, and Marcus just kind of cuts to the case. He goes, look.
It started off nice.
He goes, how did you do it?
Mm-hmm.
He goes, never mind. I'll figure that out on my own. Why did you, though?
Right. He's
like, I know why Tanner did. Like, that was his life. It makes sense of why he did this. But why did you do it? That's the part that he can't figure out. And Toby gives a speech here. A little monologue that goes along the lines of like, look, I've been poor my whole life. My parents were poor. Their parents were poor. My kids are never going to have to struggle with that ever again. They're not going to be poor. He's like, being poor is like it's a disease. Like it infects you and it infects those around you and just kind of keeps going unless something drastic happens. And my kids are never going to have to know that. They can, you know, if they want to sell the land, they can sell the land. But they're going to get the money first.
Yeah, it's up to them.
And while they're sitting there talking, there's this great moment where Toby basically says, look, if you want to end this now, we can see if you can reach for your gun before I can pull the trigger on mine.
Yeah.
And there's this excellent moment of just silence where the tension is to the roof. You don't know if one of them is going to pull and shoot the other one, and it feels like they're going to. Like they both maybe want to do this. And just as it feels like it's right about to happen, a car pulls up. And out comes his 2 kids and the ex-wife.
Yeah.
And Marcus realizes, this isn't your house. He's like, no, I just ground keep a little bit now and then, tidy up. And he's like, oh. So he realizes at that point, like, you did do this for your family, okay.
We also, like, it kind of clicks into place that he's got paint spatters on his clothes. So he's been doing some painting and, you know, work. And as soon as he sees them get out of that car, he kind of relaxes his shoulders and lets the gun fall to his side.
Marcus gets up to leave, and as he's leaving, Toby kind of walks with him out, and Toby says, I'm ready to be done with this. And Marcus just turns to him and says, you won't ever be. It will haunt both of us for the rest of our lives. And maybe one day, they might give each other peace. If you ever want to do that, you can come find me. They both basically say, like, you can come find me if you ever want to have peace. Meaning, like, if you really ever want to end this and not let it haunt you, the only way is to die.
Yeah. And I think he tells him that he's like, no, I've got a small house. I'm renting a small house in town or something. I forget where he says.
Yeah.
He says something like, yeah, if I've got a small house. You can come by any time.
Yep.
And we can continue this conversation then.
And that's the end of the movie. Marcus goes off into the distance while Toby sits there. I hesitate to say, like, triumphantly.
Yeah.
Because while he reached what he wanted, he lost a lot along the way. Yeah. So that's the end of the movie.
It's also something to note, too, that when they are having this little dialogue back and forth, Chris Pine's character says to him, like, you know, you didn't lose anything. You didn't lose anyone in this. And he goes, no, my partner lost his entire family. I lost my partner. He lost his family. You know, that's why it's still, you know, I'm still raw about it.
Yeah.
And I like that when the family did show up, or when the ex-wife and the kids showed up, she did walk up on the porch as they were going inside, and she just kind of saw that, you know, he was holding a shotgun, and she didn't know who this man was, and she said, is everything okay? And was it Marcus that said, yep, we're just old friends. And they just went about their time. So it's, I don't know what I think from the ending. If I actually think that they would meet up later on in life and duel it out, or if they would just both leave it alone.
I think I would take away that Marcus got the answer that he wanted. Because his struggle was to understand, like, why did my partner die for this? Why did, I want to say it was like 4 people in total. Why did, was it 4 people or was it 3? It's 4 people because it's Tanner included and then the 2 people at the bank. Right. Why did 4 people die for this? Like, what is it? And he understands at the end that it was the family, to make better for his family than what he ever had, and maybe improve their chances of, like, leading a good, honest life versus whatever. Right. And Toby just has, like, well, you killed my brother, so
yeah,
like, Toby isn't going to search out the man
for
vengeance or anything.
No,
because they knew going into this there was always a possibility that something like that would happen to them. And I think he's perfectly fine letting things be as they are.
Yeah.
Unless Marcus comes back around. But I don't think Marcus would, because he seems to have gotten his answers. And he seems content with letting it, haunt him that he could not stop them before Alberto died. But at least now he knows why.
He knows why, and then he also probably knows that, he never was in trouble with the law before. He did what he did, and he's probably not going to be in trouble with the law anytime after.
Yeah.
And it's a cool scene too that we leave from the ranch, because we see just acres and acres of the land that has the oil rigs on it. So they're going to be so set.
Yeah, they got money now. They got bank.
They got big bank.
So yeah, that's the end of the movie. I love this movie.
It's a great movie.
I think it is fantastic. I also do know that I've got a little bit of a penchant for westerns, which is more or less a dead genre, unless you want to watch like old-timey westerns. But the contemporary westerns that Taylor Sheridan has been doing, I've enjoyed all of them to a degree. A few slightly less than the next, but this one for me was definitely a high point of 2016.
I think my favorite, my tier goes No Country for Old Men at number 1, and then I have to put True Grit number 2 because that's my dad's favorite movie.
The original or the remake? And are you just talking about just westerns?
Yeah. No, the new one. No, I take it back. Okay. No Country for Old Men, Hell or High Water, True Grit, the newer one.
You want a fun fact?
Sure.
I saw the 2011 True Grit on a date.
Oh. What's her name? Where do I find her?
I don't know where you find her.
Go beat her up.
Yeah, I bet.
Was that 2011?
Yeah.
Really?
Pretty sure.
Yeah, he was really good in that too.
Yep. So yeah, the movie's fantastic, and I do enjoy the themes and sort of what it's talking about as far as how property and banks and repossession sort of work, and that it really hurts the sort of little man or the people who aren't as well off, especially if there happens to be a death in the family, for example.
Absolutely.
And then there are feelings towards the end of both of our leads kind of having remorse and regrets over what happened, and maybe not doing things differently, and maybe if they better planned ahead, they would have maybe gone to Coleman actually instead of Post, even if the drive was longer, or whatever it might have been. Maybe he could have figured it out sooner, or maybe they could have better tied Toby's involvement into this instead of who else do we look at? Who else does Tanner have as an associate? Or if they could have figured out the stuff about in Oklahoma, they could have, the casinos have security cameras. You could have pinned both of them there, bringing in loads of cash, and then there you go. But they don't know any of those parts, and again, that's not even what Marcus was worried about. He's like, how'd you do it? He's like, no, I'll figure out how you did it.
That's
but
not what I'm worried
why
about.
did you do
Why?
it?
I think that it is a really good combination of psychological action, funniness, humor, and again, there were so many parts where I jumped and put my hands over my mouth and was like, oh my god. I think that's a perfect combination. And I, personally, in my brain, would like to believe that at some point, him and that waitress get together. And she gets to enjoy his millions of dollars.
Yeah. Hey, I'm that bank robber that you flirted with that one time.
Remember that one time? I found some oil.
My kids are rich,
My
but
kids
not
are-
me. Do you still need a new chef?
That's what I choose to believe.
Yeah, but this movie's great.
Yeah, it's really
if you haven't watched it in a while, go watch it again. I very, very highly recommend it.
The acting is fantastic.
The acting all around is great from our 4 central characters. And then a bunch of the side characters are great as well. Both of the waitresses in the movie are great for different things. And it's a fun, pretty easy, quick watch it's fantastic.
It's really great. Very captivating, beautifully shot.
Yeah, excellent.
Excellent. Agreed. Very good choice.
I'm sure in the future I'll want to talk about Wind River because I think Wind River is very good as well, and maybe even lesser talked about or raved about. I do know when it came out as the follow-up to Hell or High Water, people were like, but I think it's also great, and that's got a lot of people you really like in it, like Elizabeth Olsen, Jeremy Renner, John Barenthal's in it, and it is
that cast.
And it's a fun, while it is a contemporary Western as well, or a neo-Western, it's fun in the fact that it takes place somewhere north when it's snowing.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of snow on the ground, which is not a very common Western setting. Although there are a number of what's called Alaskan Westerns that take place in Alaska, like the James Stewart starring The Far Country. Had to get that plug in there. James Stewart. Yeah.
Always with the James Stewart.
Anyway, thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening.
You can find new episodes up all the time on Thursdays, wherever you listen to streaming things, Podbean, Spotify, Apple Podcast, all those other ones, or even if you're listening on YouTube, thank you. Yeah. Wherever you are, be sure to give us a rating, a comment, whatever, that sort of stuff. All helps. Share it with friends, family, all that sort of stuff.
And if you have any suggestions for movies that you might like us to consider, let us know.
Yeah, leave those in the comments. We'll be back next week with a Maggie pick.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can find us all over the place at COAS_podcast or just Chicken on a Stick podcast. And every Friday we do some sort of review on a movie we went and saw that week.
Yeah.
So
fun time.
You can find us on Twitch for that as well.
Yeah. Come hang out.
So thank you again for watching.
Thank you
or
for
listening,
watching. Yeah.
whatever it was, using your ear holes.
Yeah, thank you for your ear holes.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Goodbye.